I'm Miss Anna, and here I am. I'm going to be directing this podcast to help out all the distant learning teachers out there that are having huge problems on how to keep the attention of their students. So I'm from iTutorExpress. I just do online learning full-time, but I know you do it part-time, and your full-time job is distant learning teacher. So you're the one with the experience that all the teachers in this world right now would like to find out more about, right? So my question to you is, what are the steps that you took in the beginning to start the process of distant learning? What did you do?
So sure. The first thing I did was I communicated with my parents first.
Okay.
Communication is key with our parents. You can't just expect kids to log on if parents are not aware of how this works. So if a kid has never been exposed to Google Classroom and a parent hasn't either, then it's being able to teach that parent how to use Google Classroom or Zoom or whatever it is, right? So that they can then teach their kid. Because you can't expect a kid to navigate the online world if they haven't been exposed to that. Like, yeah, they may know these games that they have on their iPads or tablets, but entering this new learning world is very different for them. And unless you're in a privileged area, then, it's probably easy for them. But for students, I work at a public school. So there's less resources. So not all my kids are one-to-one, like they call it. One-to-one means like having a computer, every student having a computer. Yeah, we use technology, but not as much as we should be using. So once I've established that communication with parents and making sure I'm always reaching out. So for example, if I see a kid missing 2 or 3 days, I'll email the parent and say, hey, I haven't seen this student. If it's a family emergency, please let me know. I'll excuse the child. Or if you need any help, I can facilitate with anything you need. Just let me know. If you need there's an option for us that if a kid doesn't have a computer, we have to provide actual packets, they call it non-digital work. So teachers have to provide non-digital work and digital work for the kids that, have access and those kids that don't have access. And I mean, for me, most, my kids, the parents are essential workers. So some students, have to babysit. And that's their job. That's their work. So, it's much more harder on them. It's harder on them. So one thing I feel like teachers should keep in mind is that I was telling you earlier is that less is more. And I think teachers need to realize that, because we work a lot and we train ourselves, but what we're not realizing is that we're also draining our students because they're getting that burden.
Correct. Because the school system requires you to give a lot of paperwork, and they're requiring you a whole list of things that you have to cover. But you're telling me that less is more because it takes the burden off the student and the teacher as well, right?
Right. So I'm going into my 4th week of remote learning. And the first 3 weeks was just more like a learning curve for me. I wanted to see where the students are at. I wanted to see where I was at, because there's just so much information being given to us, like commercials. And, when you sit down and now there's like a bunch of commercials. Oh, by the way, you're in quarantine. You need this. You need that. And so it is the same thing for teaching. You get all these emails and it's like, oh, you want distant learning, like, try this, try that. And it's like, well, do I really need that for my student? This means that I have to teach my student how to use this now. When do I have the time? Because I only have them for, an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. Where do I find the time? I also got to teach literacy. I got to teach math. And then I got to teach the Common Core. I got to make sure they know how to do this, that, there's just so much coming at you. It's very different for primary. I think I should have mentioned that I'm a middle school teacher, but I was giving kids, like I was doing mini lessons every single day and giving an assignment every single day. And I wasn't getting the assignments back. So I questioned, like, okay, what's going on? And this is when I realized that, kids don't have the capacity that adults do to type. If they don't know how to type, then
True.
they're not going to submit an assignment. So, schools tell us give enrichment activities. And, an enrichment activity is writing journals. And we all love writing journals, right? Because it's like, you write about yourself, you write about whatever you want. That's when, it's your time to get creative. Right. I used to love journal writing. And then, I'm getting all these journals and it's just one sentence. And then, I'm like,
they're not enjoying it as much as you do.
I'm like, wait a minute. But do they know that the instructions are clear and bold and, all caps? And, you have all these squiggly lines in in just one sentence. And it's like, you realize that they don't know how to use Word. You realize that, they don't know how to grammar correct. You realize they don't know how to capitalize, how to put periods. So that's when you realize, like, hey, we also need like a typing class. So, I think I believe our science teacher has given like these free there's like free typing websites for kids. So I think they're starting to
name some. What are one of them at least?
I don't. I mean, we can.
You just Google typewriting, and you get something that will help our teachers, I guess.
I think it was typingclub.com.
Okay, so maybe putting in typingclub.com.
Yeah. And what the teacher was doing was, every as an assignment, do typing club for 15 minutes.
That's great. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and it's it's big. That way students understand how to type. That's what they need more right now. Mm-hmm. That's the critical key right now, is for them to learn how to use a computer, right? Not just a mouse and not just a screen touch, right? That's
right.
That's you have 9 months, kids at 9 months that know how to like do puzzles together, and we don't. But then, put them in front of an actual, keyboard. To them, this is Chinese,
Yes. It's learning all over again.
Yes, it's a very different language. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Good. That doesn't help them get their work done. Mm-hmm. And like you said, whatever takes us 2 minutes to type a paragraph, it takes them 3 hours just because they don't have the training to do it. So, right. And we don't get that, and the parents don't get that. So there's that gap that's there.
So I've had to slow down, and one day I'm like, I'm putting my lesson plan to the side, and I'm like, okay, today is an how-to tutorial on how to use Microsoft Word.
So when do you put it in? I'm sorry to interrupt, but like I like what you had said about every other day. What is it? What would a week look like?
So so it depends. Obviously, every time I'm looking at what my children need, right? So, but for now that I've kind of seen what's going on, we'll do a read aloud. So we're reading Wonder for literacy. And Wonder has really short chapters, which is very easy to copy and paste on PowerPoint. So I'm gonna go ahead and present to you what I have, how like a daily schedule looks like for me, for literacy, not for math, because math is another conversation to have maybe the next time.
Next podcast.
Because and every content area has different strengths and weaknesses, and the way you teach literacy is not the way you're going to teach math.
No,
it's very different. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I think I'm presenting. Am I presenting? I'm sorry, let me do this. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see you on this side and you again on this side, which means you're sharing your.
Okay. All right. So can you see my PowerPoint?
I can see your PowerPoint. Okay. Very, very nicely done.
Okay, so morning meetings. This is not a PowerPoint I did for the students, but more for us this morning. I wanted to show morning meeting ideas. So when you log in first thing in the morning, there's still students, coming in, and you don't want to start your lesson right away. You don't want to start your morning meeting right away. So as students come in, I like to put this up. Sometimes I'll put a PowerPoint slide with a word. So for example, I'll put make as many words with the word spring, and they'll write on the chat, ring, ping, whatever it is, pin, gin. And then, as more students come in, then we start our morning meeting. But another thing that, I'll put is like create math equations with these numbers, and, they have to like just make any math equations, whatever, as many as they can find. Another one is have them draw. And this is, you would need an interactive PowerPoint, which Google Slides has add-ons, which I know some districts have bought them already, and ours is Peck Decks. So I'll put this on, and it'll let you see what all the students are drawing on your side.
Okay.
I believe the students can also see what the other students are drawing, and they love talking to each other while they're doing this. And, they look forward to this, actually.
I'm sure.
And then when we start, so then when I see I have like, enough students to start,
okay,
I always have 1 or 2 students share anything they want. So they can share a pet, they can share something meaningful, something new they've done, anything. And, sometimes they don't have anything to share. And I'm like, okay, I give them ideas, and the kids give them ideas, and, I'll give brain teasers. So one of the things they love doing is brain teasers, actually. So you can find this on the web. I just copy and paste it on a slide. And how can you make the equation true by moving only one matchstick, and they, and it's only, this only takes like 2 minutes, not even. Another thing is a scavenger hunt. I'll say, okay, the first person to bring me a nail clipper, gets to read aloud today. We're the first person to show me a remote control, and and they love it. They, they start laughing, and they're like, I don't have one, and they're like, Mom, give me a remote control, whatever it is. So, it's a lot of fun. It's a way to get their adrenaline pumping, because we're sitting here for an hour or less. Yes. It's monotonous.
But this brings my attention as a child, as if I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait until the morning activities with Miss Jean, because it's so fun. I'm going to be in class on time. So that kind of even gives the student an encouragement to be there on time.
Right.
So that's awesome to do.
So, and these are ideas that I had to from collaborating with teachers, from reading online, just, you've had to just accommodate with what you got. So, and then riddles, and these are all things, riddles and brain teasers are all things you can find online. And there's many, many websites. You just Google them and they're all there. Awesome. And then one thing I want to get into that I haven't yet, because I've been trying to feel this out, but for like higher grades, like 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe this is something that they can do where they can correct a paragraph and they can actually draw it. And it's, I wrote there should be 5 corrections, and this is another thing that can take just 3 minutes, 4, depending on, I guess the level of your class. Right. And, you can also show the answer key to them afterwards. So that's morning meetings. That's how morning meetings. Sometimes our morning meetings can run from 10 minutes to half an hour. And during these times, I don't care, because the social emotional part is what we should be focusing in order for kids to be able to excel during this time.
100%. It's that connection. It's the connection of the teacher with the student. You want their attention, or else they're not going to want to come back tomorrow.
Right.
And the next day.
So that's why I'm always looking for ways to interact. And I'll be honest, my first week, I didn't have the capacity or the tech. I wasn't as techy as I am now. You get, you acclimate to the situation, right? So now I'm going to show you how a day of literacy looks. So we do read alouds every other day, not every day, because then the next day I give them a writing assignment. And that's how I integrate reading and writing together. I can't do reading and writing together in one sitting. That's just impossible. And if there's a teacher that does it, hey, by all means, that's awesome. But for the needs of my students, this is what we do first. And like I was telling you, less is more. So I'm not going to jam my students with all these learning activities if they, if we can't do it in college, we go to college and we're cramming for 5, sometimes 7 classes, and then what the next thing we're doing is forgetting about it, and we're not actually internalizing what we're learning. So I don't, I also integrate the standards. I make sure to integrate the standards, but this is how we do it, visualize. So before we start our reading, I'll ask them, where are we in the story? And then the students start answering, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. So then I'll go over these bullet points. So this is where we are. So we can visualize where we are, where we left off, and then be ready to move on. And then we apply more reading strategies. What are your connections? Have you made any connections from this story? Predictions. What is going to happen next? Questions. What are your questions? Tell me, because if you have questions, other students have questions. And my students are very vocal, so they, they're all chiming in, and this takes us like 5 minutes.
Right. You type all of this, or you found it somewhere?
So that's another thing. So I did type all this, but this one in particular, I use every time we do a read aloud. So I copy and paste. Okay.
Okay. So it's kind of like a guide.
Yeah. So we're covering at least 4 out of the 6 or 7 reading strategies, right? Because we visualize, we make connections, predictions, and questions. Very quick, less than 10 minutes.
Okay.
Then I have to read the chapter before, because you have to in order to see what they're going to be understanding and what they're not going to understand.
Correct.
So
you got to do your homework.
Yeah. So for this, like I read Miss Fowl, Mon Mothma references, and I'll tell them like, hey, some of you may watch Jimmy Neutron, some of you don't. I sure don't. So here's the teacher in Jimmy Neutron. And then this is Mon Mothma. Apparently, this is a Star Wars. I'm not into Star Wars. So apparently, the main character in Wonder is into Star Wars, and this is a reference that he uses. Vocabulary is very key, and I try to make my vocabulary very visual. Is no matter what. It's non-negotiable. Just because reading, we're going to be doing a lot of reading, so they need to visualize. They need to understand these vocabulary words. It's not just about like, okay, do you know what this means? And just writing definitions. No. Especially English language learners. And even if you're just monolingual, where you just know English, you want to give your kids access to these visuals. And it looks like a lot of work, but I rely on teacher pay teachers. There's PowerPoints there. I buy them. This came from a PowerPoint from teacher pay teachers, and I copy and pasted it.
No way. Okay.
Yes. And then first aid jitter. Well, these are all mine. But that's from teacher pay teachers. Okay. Then we start our chapter. Now, if you notice, my chapter has different colors.
Yes.
So the narrator is in red. So this is a lot of work. I only recommend this if you don't have children like me, and just because it flows. I tell my students like, okay, so and so you're Augie, so and so, let me make up names. Maria, you're Charlotte. Sonia, you're Dad. Joelle, you're the narrator, and I do that in the beginning, and it just flows, and the kids are paying attention. And when they get stuck, they help each other out. And sometimes they're like, hey, Maria, aren't you paying attention? Like, it's your turn, But it doesn't allow me to interfere with the reading. I'm just sitting back and listening to them. Some teachers do it by paragraphs or by pages, whatever it is. But look at these chapters; they're very short. This is just 4 slides, and then I'm going back and forth. So there's 4 slides for this chapter. Okay. And then at the end of the chapter, well, actually, like I said, if you have a lot of time, you can do this. So with my interactive slides, there's a question on the other side that will show up. What is this? The highlighted, is it a metaphor? Is it a simile? Is it a personification? And on my side, I can see what the kids pick.
Oh, okay.
So at the end of when we read this slide, I can tell whether the kids understand figurative language. And then here, I tell them in one sentence, write what this chapter was about, which is the gist, right? What is the gist about? That way I know that they're internalizing the chapter, and it should, it's just one sentence. So before moving on, you want to grab, you want to see what they're doing. You don't want to keep reading, and then not knowing what they're internalizing. And then if we have time, we'll do a second chapter. If we don't, I cut it short. And then after we read the 2 chapters, we do understanding the text. That's our discussion. And, this doesn't take long either. I grab these questions from Teacher Pay Teachers. These are not questions I create.
So what would be the homework here?
Homework. So before I would have comprehension questions as homework. Now I do not do that anymore. Now, the following day I give an assignment. Oh, so there you go. When we do read alouds, I assign iExcel. And if you're a school that doesn't have iExcel, it's like a Khan Academy. And so like I'll tell them your assignment is to do iExcel up to 80%. That way they're not spending so much time on iExcel. Or if they're struggling with iExcel, I tell them at least do 20 minutes. And I can go on iExcel and it tells me whether that student was there for 20 minutes or not. Another thing I've been doing is that on Google Classroom, I'll tell them click done to this question once you finish your iExcel code. And I have, the students, once they do that iExcel, they go back and tell me, and then I'll go double check. And that's how we've been doing that.
And the next day, would you go over the homework with them, or what would the next day look like?
iExcel is independent. iExcel is something they can do independent.
Right, but I'm talking about this particular lesson. What will you do the next day?
So the next day would be, so we have something called RACE, which is analyzing textual evidence. And you know what? Let me pull that up right now. So I give them a Word document and we go over that Word document. But before we went over that Word document, you have to explain this again. Even if they were exposed to it, even if you drilled them 10 times in the classroom, they need to see how it looks on the computer world, because they don't know how it looks in the computer world. They know how it looks in our classroom, right? Yeah. So I had to do this. So this didn't take me long. Citing text evidence. What is text evidence? And I had them answer before I showed the responses, right? Why do I need to cite evidence from a text? It's very easy to tell a kid, hey, do this. But why? Why do I need to do it? They need to understand that they need this for the future, right? This is how we write research. This is how we take data. So it makes our argument more powerful, and it goes beyond our opinions and thoughts and feelings. This, race. Can you tell me what does R stands for? A, C, E, and it's supposed to be restate the question, answer the question, cite your evidence, explain your answer. And then this is a sentence stem, which I believe all students should have sentence stems, because a lot of our students forget. I mean, we're not in our classroom. We don't have our journals, right? So this is I post this onto their materials and resources under classwork. So just in case they ever get stuck, they know how to cite evidence and they know how to explain it. Okay. But we use a graphic organizer, and you can pull it from Teacher Pay Teachers. I had a teacher create one and I ran with it. Let me see if I can pull it up for you. But the first thing I did was I modeled it first, and I asked the kids to do it word for word, so that I know they understand what they're doing, and and seeing if they're able to type it all. Right. You can't just assign something without I can't pull it up right now because there's a lot of, let me see. Forget it. I can't pull it up. But so my graphic organizer looked like it had 5 boxes. R, and we would restate the question.
Mm-hmm.
And A, we would answer the question.
Okay.
C, then I would type. So we would go back to my graphic organizer and I'm like, hey, you know, what's the sentence stem that I can use? And, you know, a student will shout out the sentence stem and I would, you know, write it. So I'm the secretary. You know, I'm the secretary. I'll type it. I'm typing whatever they're telling me. Okay. And I always, you know, remind them, like, remember, citing is word for word. So, you know, you can copy and paste, and showing them how to copy and paste, because some of them don't know how to copy and paste.
How to. Yep, exactly.
So that it can make their life easier.
Right.
And once we have all that broken down, we make one big paragraph from it. And all they have to do is copy and paste everything that we wrote on that graphic organizer.
So this is all for 2 days, you said, or is it does this?
Oh, it depends. It depends how long your morning meeting goes. This is stuff that, you know, teachers have to make executive decisions on every single day. Like, I don't, you know, at first I was like, oh my God, we got to get through this. No, you know what? Sometimes, like I said, you have to realize less is more. It's better to get through the text at the time that we can. So like I said, I usually plan for 2 chapters in one day. However, It depends on the morning meeting. So if the morning meeting runs longer, then it'll probably be 1 chapter. If it doesn't, then it'll be 2 chapters. And so like, let's say if I get through 1 chapter, then the next day we'll finish the next chapter and then we'll go into the writing activity.
Okay. How do you test them on this? Or is there any test or no?
Well, as of right now, we're just doing just reading and writing activities. And I mean, the writing, I feel like in itself is a huge learning experience, because they're learning how to do a lot. They're learning how to capitalize sentences. And, you know, even though it seems so trivial, so small, they know how to do it on paper, but it's not as easy on here. I do give tests for math. For literacy, I was thinking of giving them a test. I just haven't given them anything yet, just because I'm still in that learning process.
Right.
But how would a test look like? A test would look like I would give them a question. I would give them a different question, and they would have to complete that. They would have to answer it, citing textual evidence and explaining their textual evidence.
Okay. So explaining textual evidence. Got it. Of that particular text you send them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, I mean, obviously, teachers are using Google Forms to create multiple choice questions. I try to stay away from that. Yeah, like it's good to have that. I like to incorporate that more into my Google class, my PowerPoint slides, because that way instantly I know whether the students are understanding the text or not. I don't, you know, it's harder when you teach after you have taught everything and you can't go back and reteach it because you have so many kids on a different level and, you know, 2 or 3 struggling. But that's the way I teach literacy.
Well, it sounds like you go on and beyond what a lot of teachers sometimes don't even have the time to do, because they have their own kids. And they have to help their kids try to, achieve their goals.
Yeah, it's
hard for some of the teachers to accomplish all this, but I know there's some that are going to follow what you're doing and do wonders.
Yeah, every student is different, and like I said, I rely on teacher pay teachers. So if there's a book you want to do, I was lucky enough that my teachers were able to find. My 5th grade team was able to find, I believe, Wonder PDF. So all I got to do is copy and paste. So
that's really great.
Yeah, finding books that you can PDF. I know there's a lot of library sources out there. I'm sure, you know, like the libraries of, you know, the state and the city, they have their own resources, so you can use that. But I like PDF just because I can easily copy and paste and I can format it into my Google Slides.
Well, You did great. It's time for us to, wrap it up. But you gave so much information that I will have to, see this video over and over to get some of it.
Yeah, no,
And use it and share it.
next time we can talk about math, because I didn't get to math. And math is a whole different ball game. Math is very different. And in math, I do weekly quizzes with Google Forms.
Yeah, that would be fun to know. And
yeah,
I can't wait for that podcast to run. But thank you very much, Lili, for your time. This was great. And it's going to help so many teachers. Trust me. I know it will. All right. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Till next time.
Bye.